Hello and welcome to the Trekitt podcast, where we talk about everything outdoor related, from kit and locations to stories and the people behind them. Whether you're a walker, climber, mountaineer or just someone that loves being outside, you can find all the kit and advice for your next adventure on our website, which is www.trekitt.co.uk. Or you can actually come and speak to a real person right here in our service centre in Hereford. Hello and welcome to yet another Trekitt podcast, and we are here today in the rather splendid Trekitt podcast room with Harry, who's twiddling his knobs, and with Matt from Mountain Equipment. Hello, Matt.
Hello. Yeah, good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, Matt is rather. I'm not sure whether it's a compliment or not, but you're known as Dr. Down, aren't you?
Yeah, I sometimes am. Yeah. That's the name that's. It's in the office. I'm pretty often called that, and I've got a lab coat with Dr. Down embroidered on it. So
that's impressive. That's impressive. Yeah. So that's kind of given away what we're going to talk about today, which is we're going to talk about down and what it is, what it does, what it's good for, what it's not good for, what it's made from, all that kind of stuff. We're going to have a deep dive into down. Delicious deep dive into down. I can't think of any more words beginning with D that would alliterate that sentence any further. So moving on quickly before we delve into the realms of irrelevance. Matt, why don't you just give us a brief introduction about who you are, what you do, what you like doing, what you get up to, what your job is, and why you're called Dr. Down.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Matt. I work for Mountain Equipment and have done for about 7.5 years. I joined them straight after doing a PhD. My PhD was in down feathers. I think the title was The Structure and Properties of Down Feathers and Their Use in the Outdoor Industry. So very specific, as all PhDs are. Yeah. But yeah, I did that for 3.5 years. It took to do my PhD. And then before that, I did a master's in advanced textiles and performance clothing at Leeds Uni. And then before that, I did a chemistry master's. So, chemistry is all about properties of materials and trying to make the most out of things and, analysing things. And, you sort of carry that theme onwards. So my day-to-day job now is product engineer, where I'm looking at long-term developments on materials, obviously looking a lot at insulation, sleeping bags, insulated products, but more broadly, new materials that might be interesting. I might be looking at fabrics that aren't part of your normal fabric range, so trying to look at things that are a bit outside of our normal scope or outside of our normal suppliers. And then because Mountain Equipment's still a relatively small team, I'm also chipping in with other bits and pieces, whether that's bits of marketing, sometimes bits of product management, all sorts of different things. It's a good role. It's pretty varied.
I bet that's really, really interesting. Actually,
it is. It is really good. And occasionally you get a really special day or week. And last week was particularly good. So that was a really good week at work. And this was not just set up for the podcast. This was genuinely a really good week. We were doing our first ever sort of athlete meet. So this was all of our pro team or sponsored climbers or whatever you want to call them. They were all over in Wales for a week. And some of them are, really familiar with Wales. Some of them live there. Some of them have lived there in the past. Some of them are other Brits who, regularly travel to Wales. And then we've got teams from Eastern Europe and Germany where, some of them have never been to Wales before. So we had a real mixture of people, men, women, all different ages, loads of different climbing backgrounds. Just absolutely smashing things, which was great. And we had some people from the office climbing more moderately difficult things. And I think the most amazing day though for me was definitely when I went to go climbing with Dave McLeod, which was I've met Dave a few times. Yeah. I've been climbing on his indoor wall before with him, but this was a pretty unique experience. And I ended up belaying him on a project of his, which is E9. So people don't get to belay on E9s very often. So that was bizarre.
You didn't second it then?
I didn't. No. Wait. What was funny was while he was setting up his rigging at the top, I was trying to work out where the start of the route went because I didn't actually know. Yeah. And as it is, the start's relatively straightforward. It comes in from the right rather than going straight up. I was trying to go straight up, which has not yet been climbed by anybody, and is tremendously difficult. So I was project this. What would this be, an E10? I think. Yeah. So I was projecting
Claim
that.
it.
But yeah. That can be my project. But I think I might leave that to the next generation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite tough climbing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it was incredible. Yeah. No, it's absolutely amazing to watch. He is so dedicated, so meticulous is an approach to everything. It really is impressive. And we weren't bouldering on his wall. He was just doing a normal training session. But I just came away thinking that I've never tried hard at anything compared to what he does. He's just training so. He just tries extremely hard. Every single go.
You don't get to be that good by chance, do you?
No, you don't. No, you don't. And I don't really believe particularly in talent. I think some people are predisposed to having a better build for climbing, or they might have more certain muscle fiber types, all this sort of stuff. They might have a better, they might have started earlier, all these sort of things. Yeah. But for the majority of people, it's just try a bit harder.
Absolutely, pure application.
It is.
And sacrifice.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I wouldn't say Dave lives like a monk, but he certainly, he trains hard. He trains really, really hard, and that means he doesn't go drinking in the bar every evening, which is like I do, so I don't get any better.
So you're happy with your lower grade climbing?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's always a compromise.
Absolutely,
absolutely. Anyway, all right. Well, that's fascinating. I mean, I was gonna. You kind of answered one of my first questions. Was rattling around in my little brain. Was how on earth you ended up doing a PhD in down and feather, but that all makes sense. That from the chemistry, and then moving on and ending up doing that PhD, like I said, is a very, very specialised subject, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a year in industry working for a carbon fibre composites company a long while ago, and that was sort of super high performance materials, and it was about properties of materials and trying to make them better. This was for aerospace and for like F1 cars, that sort of thing. And I realised that sort of the really high performance stuff was what interested me most. And I've been hiking and hill walking since I was a kid, and I've been really interested in how does a Gore-Tex jacket work? How does a breathable product work? And I realised that area is so difficult to change things without huge budgets. I mean, obviously you can, with a PhD, you can really, really delve down into something and get better at it. But with down, the more I looked into it, the more I realised we didn't know anything about it. So I thought, I can make a difference here, because people didn't know how much down feather weighed. Like real basics. People had never really looked into it.
Yeah, so, I guess because it's a natural product.
Yeah,
that people just assumed or just took it for granted that it was there and that's what it did and it worked. And
that's right. Yeah,
it'd been used for centuries by I suppose indigenous people living in colder climates.
Yeah,
right through to mountaineers and people going outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. And if something works, you just think, this is great, it works. We didn't really know why. We had some ideas, and there'd been some really good research done, but it was an area where I thought I can actually make a difference here, which is quite satisfying.
And I guess kind of the path that led you through to mountain equipment was that due to, like you said, being a keen outdoor person, into being in the hills and wanting to be part of that industry? Yeah,
absolutely. I was sort of fortunate in some regards that while I was doing my PhD, there was a project that came through to the uni. The university often does work for companies.
Yeah.
And there was a project, the mountain equipment had paid Leeds to do a sort of big project into down density and what's the perfect density for sleeping bags. And when this project came through, my supervisor said, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. This would be really quite good." So that was sort of my way in. It meant I suddenly knew somebody, and that is always helpful for an industry. But yeah, we often get inquiries at work. People saying, "I'd really like to work in your industry. How do I do it?" Or there might be people with engineering background saying, "Well, you're a product engineer, but I've not studied anything like you're doing." And the thing I always say is that if you're into the outdoors, you've got so much of a better chance. I think I wouldn't have got my job if I wasn't interested in the outdoors. I could have been a super duper expert on down, but if I didn't understand its application, you weren't going to get the job.
If you don't know what it's like to be cold and wet up a mountain, or to be warm and dry up a mountain,
exactly,
or to actually what it's like in that environment, it must be really hard to go from kind of the raw material to the end use.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of academia struggles with sometimes, is that a lot of these people are very, very specialist, but don't always think too hard about the end use. So you see people doing amazing work, but it's sometimes, they're just trying to get to a certain point. They've not thought the next stage, the sort of, I suppose, business end, commercial end.
Yeah, it's almost theoretical at that point, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, on that, that's often amazing work, but the difficult bit is sometimes applying that to a real situation. Yeah.
Cool. Right. Well, let's skip right down to basics.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is down? Exactly.
Yeah.
What is down? A lot of people get it confused with feathers.
Yes. Yeah.
I suppose, what are feathers?
Yeah. So that's a good definition on feathers. Feathers are the most complex. I can't remember. There is a very nice definition that I can't remember the words of, but it's basically they are the most complex epidermal appendage. I think that's what you say. So they're
epidermal.
So they're coming out of the skin.
Out of the skin.
Yeah. And you've got nails and things like this, and hair.
Rhinoceros horns.
Absolutely. These are all keratinous. They're all made of keratin.
Yeah.
But very complex ones are feathers. They're the most complicated in terms of structure, and probably in terms of microstructure as well. So feathers are broadly divided into flight feathers, which most birds have got. I think probably all birds.
Yeah.
Even
probably. The ones that don't fly have probably got them.
I think we could probably say safely that one. And then you've got down feathers on some birds, which tend to be waterfowl. And down feathers, the sort of definition that people tend to use is the under feathers of waterfowl. So waterfowl are geese, ducks, swans, which means for the outdoor industry that basically refers to geese and ducks. We tend to not do much farming of swans. So you've got the flight feathers on top, and then underneath you've got your down feathers. So the down feathers do the insulating. They do the insulation is their primary role, basically.
Right.
A bit of protection, a bit of padding, perhaps.
Okay.
And certainly when they're used to line nests, it's providing insulation and also a bit of padding. But they're underneath the flight feathers. Flight feathers are obviously for flying, but display, protection against wet water, all that sort of stuff.
So they're generally kind of stiffer, stronger, hookier, because it's all made up of little filaments, aren't they? And they kind of hook together. Is that right?
Yeah.
Because I know if you find a feather on the floor, you can kind of pull it apart, and it kind of what's the right way? It almost crackles, doesn't it? You pull the filaments apart.
They're
flight feather.
They are amazing, and they sort of like roof tiles. They'll overlap over each other, and this is why birds preening each other or preening one another or themselves is so important, because otherwise they don't overlap perfectly, and suddenly you've got problems with birds taking on water or birds that are struggling to fly, that sort of thing.
Right.
And obviously, I think we'll get onto water resistance as well later. But when you see birds caught up in oil spills, they start sinking and drowning. It's because they're no longer water repellent.
Right. So in terms of structure, the down clusters, that's the right word, is it? A cluster?
Down cluster, or down feather,
Yeah, that is less rigid than a flight feather and kind of fluffier.
Yeah.
And has got kind of looser filaments that just kind of waft around and trap air. That's how they work, basically.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So it's the best sort of structure for trapping air, and people have done mathematical modelling on this. So it's a fractal structure. So that's almost like a tree, where it's self-replicating. So one bit becomes 2 bits, becomes 4 bits, and it's sort of people have said it's mathematically perfect for trapping air. So it's a pretty impressive thing that nature's come to this through, I suppose, effectively trial and error.
Yeah.
The centre of a bit is basically you've got a barb that is the central bit is called the. I'm going to call it the central bit for now.
It's called the central bit.
Yeah. And then you've got barbs coming off that.
Yeah.
And then barbules coming off those. And the barbules are really, really, really fine. They're like 2 microns, whereas a human hair is something like 30 times that.
Oh, wow.
And then off the barbs, there's nodes, which is these tertiary structures, which are very much like the ones on the flight feathers. They're designed to stop other barbs and barbules from sliding across each other, but they're just on a much, much smaller scale. Right. They look like little rosebuds. Okay. And there's 2 types of those, and geese and ducks have got slightly different ones.
Wow.
So that's
all on one little down cluster.
It's bonkers, yeah. Because when you look at it with the human eye, you can see the individual barbs, but you can't really see barbules, and you definitely can't see the nodes.
Right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. God, I could just talk about that all day. In fact, we probably will.
Yeah.
So why do we still use down? I mean, with the advent of really good synthetic insulation, particularly for wetter climates. I'm sure we're going to touch on the wet down scenario. Many times during this podcast. And a down was obviously used historically because it was the best thing that was available.
Yeah.
Have we, as man, managed to replicate and surpass the qualities of down?
I don't think we've surpassed it yet. I think a few years ago, if you'd asked me, I'd have said we never will do. I've now come around to the idea that I think we might, but we're still not there yet. But this is for specific purposes. I think for synthetic insulation is undoubtedly better than down for certain applications, but for pure warmth to weight ratio, loft, softness, comfort while wearing it, I think down still takes some beating. But it's also worth considering the sort of the different qualities of down. When we talk about, particularly in the outdoor industry, we talk about down, we're talking about really high quality down. So mountain equipment's down tends to be 700 fill power or higher, but 700 fill power, 800 fill power, 900 fill power downs are vanishingly rare compared to most down. Most down is often mostly feathers because it's all taken off the bird as a wanner, with the flight feathers with the down. And the outdoor industry is obsessed with the highest quality stuff, whereas 99% of the industry is in bedding, where they're using the opposite end, and it's, I don't know what the fill powers would be, but they're sort of 100, 200, 300, much lower quality, and we've certainly surpassed that with in terms of warmth to weight ratio with synthetics. In terms of durability, probably not, though some synthetics are more durable than others. But why we're still using it, I think it's a byproduct of the meat industry, so it's still available while we continue to farm geese and ducks. It's a massive industry. It's multi-billion-dollar industry. It's really, really big. So there's a lot of momentum behind it. In terms of pure warmth to weight ratio, so people who are really obsessed with pack size and trying to keep their weight down, it remains the best material.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. Working in the outdoor industry, you kind of think of the down industry, the people who make the down, they just make it for us, but they don't, do they? Like you say, you think about, I don't know, bedding, and then the fashion industry. I guess that's all coming from the same source, isn't it?
It is. So our down suppliers, they supply everybody from outdoor brands to big fashion retailers, and the IKEAs of the world, or John Lewis and people like that. They'll buy a lot of down. They'll buy much more, and obviously in China that's the biggest market. It's also the biggest supplier, but they're what really drives a lot of the price. So the demand there is so important. So the price of down is fascinating. It goes up and down like the stock exchange, except the most volatile, scary stock exchange, it would be like real dangerous betting. Really? It's crazy. Weekly changes that can be massive. And actually, COVID's affected the price obviously quite significantly, but it's at the moment it's relatively stable. Whereas it can double in a year and then halve in a year. It's absolutely mad. It's really crazy. So
it's not just down. So somebody buys. I don't know, so we've mentioned John Lewis, so let's talk about them again. Somebody buys a John Lewis down duvet. That's not the same down as that you would get in a high-spec mountain equipment mountaineering jacket.
It could be from a similar source. You'd have to specifically look into it. But the actual fill power, which is one of the main things you'd buy on, and the other thing would be the down to feather ratio. They would be different. So the fill power describes, and I know you've covered this before, but the fill power describes how much volume a certain mass of down takes up, and a bigger number means a better quality down, basically. Right. And then the other thing is the down to feather ratio, where higher quality downs tend to be 90% down, or 80% down is still very good quality down, and then up to, I think 97% is as high as they'll ever state, because it's impossible to get 100% down unless you're hand picking it, which would be pretty laborious. Whereas if you're buying a duvet, it would probably be 90% feather and 10% down,
right?
Or Yeah.
Yeah, because it's less critical when you're tucked up in your bedroom, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, if you just have a huge duvet of down and you've got a relatively heavy cotton cover on it, you might end up just squashing a lot of the down, whereas flight feathers are quite resistant to compression. Yeah. So you actually might end up with better performance for that use with more feathers in it.
Yeah. No, that all makes sense. Yeah. So is it worth at this point, and I'm looking at Harry here, going into how exactly the down insulates? I mean, and that's a massive kind of subject in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
So basically it traps air, doesn't it? It traps heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it traps warm air.
Mm-hmm.
So the heat that your body is giving off
yeah.
is trapped by the down in those little filaments and nodules and all that stuff going on.
Yeah, and that's the crucial bit, is that people forget that the sleeping bag or the down jacket doesn't heat you up. You heat it up and it traps the warmth around you. And I think apart from electrically heated blankets and clothing and stuff, that's always the rule. So you've got to try and preserve your body heat. That's what you're trying to do.
And when we're talking about fill power, and we did. Harry and I made a video about fill power, so that's all explained in there if people want to go and have a look at that. But basically that's kind of how fluffy down is, isn't it? How much it expands. So the more it expands, the more air is going to trap.
Yeah.
The more warm air is going to work.
Absolutely.
So when you mentioned, putting a heavy cotton cover on a big fluffy down duvet and it compresses it, that reduces the ability of it to insulate.
Yeah, absolutely. So thickness is all important, and it's the thing that I probably bore people to tears with, but the thickness of something is key to its insulation. And I think down is slightly more complicated than usual, but if you've got a thin jacket and a thicker jacket, the thicker one's almost always going to be warmer, assuming similar levels of wind resistance and stuff like that. Yeah, and similar fit. Yeah, that's the other big thing we haven't discussed.
That's probably a whole new podcast in its own, isn't it?
Fit and features.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to where the down comes from. And understandably there's a lot of controversy about down production.
Yep.
It comes from birds. And do you want to just talk us a little bit about how you ensure that is done as nicely, as well as possible?
Yeah.
I know you have your down codex scheme, so do you want to just talk us through that?
Yeah. So down, as you say, is obviously sourced from geese and ducks. They're living animals, and therefore it is absolutely imperative that they are the down is as ethically sourced as possible. I think if you're a vegan who doesn't want to use, say, leather shoes, then there's an argument totally justifiable that they don't want to wear down. I think that's fine. Having said that, there's a lot you can do to make sure the down is as ethically sourced as possible. So until about 10 years ago, when you were buying down, it's a really, really complicated supply chain. It's not like going to your shop, buying an apple. The apple was given from this farmer. You've got lots and lots of stages in the process, which means that traceability is really complicated and really, really hard. So until about 10 years ago, I think it's probably fair to say a lot of people in the industry didn't really know where their down was coming from. They'd buy it from their wholesaler, and their wholesaler would have sort of bought it from various different places, and there wasn't a lot of traceability. So you could have got a certain level of guarantee regarding the down, but you didn't know a lot about it. So Mountain Equipment were one of the first brands to really do a big, big project with the IDFL, so the International Down and Feather Laboratory, looking at exactly where the down came from. So they were going to individual farms, individual slaughterhouses, and trying to work out exactly what was going on. This turned into Down Codex. It was originally called the Happy Goose Project, I think. The original folder is still on our server, this has turned into a large part of my job and a large part of my boss's job as well. What we tend to do is whenever we're looking for a new down supplier, basically the first question we'll ask is, you need to meet these points, these criteria. You must have access to water. There must be the RSPCA's 5 principles in place, which is a sort of regarding welfare. And there's this big checklist, and if they sort of get that, and they understand it, they sort of understand what we're trying to do, we're like, okay, that's the first stage. Then we'll start talking about other things. Codex is a huge part of our business now. It's we've got our own website regarding Codex, where you can scan or type in a code that comes with your product. And then you can read the audit reports from independent auditors. You can look at the exact fill power for that batch of down. That remains a unique system, and you can read more about where that down comes from. So it's a traceability scheme, but it also is about welfare, because traceability is pointless if you're not checking something.
If what you find out at the end of it is not good.
Exactly. And it's also a quality control thing as well. So we can, by checking individual batches, we check them when they leave the down wholesaler, we check them when they arrive at the factory, and then we also take products from stock, shred them, and then send off that down to check that it all makes sense. So there's a lot of stages in the chain where down can be meddled with potentially. So you do have to be pretty meticulous. But I think probably the best thing about Codex is that now we're no longer unique. Well, I think the Codex is still unique in many ways, but the fact that we're no longer the only down quality standard is fantastic. So things like RDS, if we were the only brand doing this, it's good. But the fact that the whole industry has had to up their game that's its biggest legacy, really.
And has the whole industry upped its game?
It has, absolutely. I think nowadays the worst thing would be if consumers stop caring, assume that everything is ethically sourced. That would be the worst thing. So if you don't see a badge saying ethically sourced down or something regarding the source of the down, consumers should ask. They should not be assuming that it's good.
Right.
The changes are huge. Like, nowadays, if we go about 10, 15 years ago, people really didn't know a lot about their down supply chains. There are exceptions, obviously, but in general, whereas nowadays people are much more aware. So that's
absolutely. I think I mean, one of our earlier podcasts, we were talking to Anna from Montaigne, and I think consumers are becoming a lot more aware and a lot more demanding, and rightly so, of having ethical, environmental, sustainable products.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's really, really good. And I think the minute the foot comes off the gas, people can start. You can start sneaking things in. It's often not deliberate. People are not out to get people, but it's often just a rushed thing, or things just might start creeping in.
So where does the best down come from? Is it from Europe? Is it from? I'm kind of thinking kind of northern Scandinavia, northern Europe, northeastern Europe. Where it's cold, basically.
Yeah,
where the big fluffy ducks and geese are. Eider ducks. I mean, everyone knows the phrase an eider down. But I don't think many people realise that it's actually a duck.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an eider duck.
Absolutely. So eider ducks are absolutely unique. They're amazing because they're so hardy. They come to Scotland in the winter to shelter,
to chill out.
I mean, like
to get warm.
That's right. They are amazing, and their down is really so geese and ducks, like conventional farmed geese and ducks, their down is relatively similar. If I gave you some, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, nor would I without a microscope.
Right.
Whereas you give somebody eider duck down, it's completely different. It's very, very different. And it's sourced in a different way as well. So while the others come from farmed birds, eider ducks are wild birds. They're not able to be farmed, so people have to hand remove it from nests. It's really, really laborious.
Because they nest up on the tundra, don't they?
Exactly, yeah. So it's really, really difficult work, and as a result,
expensive.
The cost is amazing.
Is it still used widely?
It's used largely in Japanese duvets, so it's a really specialist market, and I can't remember the numbers, but they are terrifying for the price. It's really amazing. It's like, it's something like $3,000 a kilo. It's a lot. Black Diamond did a eider down jacket or vest a few years ago, I remember, and it was very expensive and didn't last particularly long.
No.
We've never considered using it, to be quite honest. It's so expensive, and it's an amazing material, but the benefit probably isn't quite there.
No.
But in terms of durability and stuff, amazing.
It's the best you can get.
In terms of warmth to weight ratio, to be quite honest, I've never tested it.
Right.
But its fill power is not as high as people think.
Okay.
Its fill power is maxes out about 700.
Oh, right.
But its springiness and its sort of durability and smash proofness is incredible, and compression resistance as well.
Right.
So
for the rest of us mere mortals who can't afford pure eider down, where does it come from mostly?
The most down is from China, and the best down is Yeah, it probably still is Eastern Europe.
Right.
Hungary's got a big reputation for really good down, as has Poland.
Mm-hmm.
Russia as well. Obviously, that's become slightly challenging. Yeah,
Yeah.
Our goose down for a long time was sourced from Russia,
Right.
and yeah, we've had to stop working with that supplier. The supplier's still fantastic, but it's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible, and it doesn't look great if you're advertising Russian goose down.
No.
It looks like supporting something you're possibly not.
Understand that completely.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate, this is all the down is a byproduct of basically the meat industry. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so those awful things hear about live plucking and all that kind of horrible stuff that goes on.
Yeah,
just it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen regularly. No, I shouldn't say it doesn't happen. In duck down sourcing, live plucking is basically not a thing. Ducks, it doesn't really fit into that supply model. If you're hearing about live plucking, it tends to refer to geese, and things like foie gras sourcing obviously is still a thing in parts of the world. So foie gras production is illegal in the UK, for example. It's illegal in other parts of Europe, but it's also legal in France and other places. Yeah. So foie gras is force feeding geese for fattening their liver. Some people might think that's fine because it's a delicacy. Some people don't want that. It's part of our rules that we are not allowed to source down that's from birds that are from foie gras production. And it's a sort of a tricky one, foie gras, because in a perverse way, birds that are bred for foie gras tend to have very, very good living conditions because the birds are extremely expensive. They're worth a lot of money. However, they're also force-fed. So it's this really strange thing. The down that comes from these birds tends to be very, very good as well because they're birds that are quite old, which tends to produce better quality down. And as I say, the living conditions, apart from being force-fed,
apart from that,
are pretty good. But yeah, we don't source down from foie gras birds. Live plucking, it's a very, very, very small part of the industry. But the thing is, it doesn't mean it doesn't go on.
No.
We've never seen evidence of it in our supply chains.
Right.
But yeah, we do sometimes hear stories of auditors going to supply chains, and they say, this is happening, and so it still does go on. It's much, much less than it used to be, in part driven by consumer awareness. Nowadays, if a consumer finds out about that, they will not go anywhere near it. Quite rightly so. Yeah. And it's not like a practice where there's an argument about, I don't think it's that bad. No, it's pretty bad.
It's pretty
bad.
It is. It sounds pretty bad.
It is. It's really bad. It'd be
Yeah.
like someone pulling your hair out. It's not pleasant.
No.
So I think the big thing is now, if you're trying to sell your high quality down to an outdoor brand, they'll ask you.
Yeah.
And if you're like, I'm not sure, they're not going to buy it.
No.
So
as a consumer, to have the confidence in the product, you need to make sure that you're buying something that meets either a down codex or the responsible down standard RDS.
Yeah.
Something like that, some kind of accredited scheme.
Yeah.
That proves the source of the down.
Absolutely.
In an ethical way.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
So
it is
vote,
important.
Vote with your wallet, people.
No. Completely. Yeah. It is. I don't know. Some people don't find this sort of thing important, but I think it is. I think it's important.
It's hugely important.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's hugely important.
100%.
I think the majority of other people would do too. So, So make sure you're buying it down from people who are buying it correctly in the first place.
Yep.
All right, Matt. So we've kind of thrashed the ethical sourcing of down.
Yep.
And what a great job you at Mountain Equipment and other brands are doing to make sure that the down that's in the products that our customers are buying is ethically sourced, and it's all good stuff, basically. I mean, I think the only thing that I think kind of springs to my mind is that there must be an awful lot of down that gets chucked away, maybe, that could be reused.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. It's something that's changed beyond belief in the last 5 years. It's pretty recent. And to be honest, the first thing I heard about recycled down, I thought, what's the point? That's genuinely what I thought.
Right.
I thought, down rots down. It's biodegradable. If you're going to recycle something, that doesn't need to be recycled. But I've changed my mind completely. Quite quickly I changed my mind on this one. So recycled down is taking down out of products that would have otherwise go to landfill or getting incinerated and using it again. So the down is taken out of duvets or pillows or sleeping bags, whatever, and then it can be washed, cleaned, sterilised, sorted, and then you basically get back to pretty much as good as virgin down. You might have had a little bit of loss of maximum quality, but you can get a really, really good quality material, and you actually save a huge amount of energy as well, because you've taken away the whole farming process, which is obviously energy intensive. So environmentally, it makes a lot of sense, and you don't have the problems associated with things rotting in landfill or getting incinerated. Right. So so it's a really, really good idea. And it's quite funny that for a long time in the down industry, recycled down was called couché. It was almost like a dirty word. It was like, oh no, not that stuff. Yeah. And particularly in America, there's still a little bit of attitude like this. So selling recycled down sleeping bags in America is still almost impossible. So we make a recycled down sleeping bag range, the Earthrise range. We don't sell them in the States. We've tried really, really hard to.
They just won't have it.
They just won't have it. No, certain states have got rules against it, and the sort of content labels on American products, it's just too complex. Which is a real pain. We're not the only brand to have this problem. But yeah, certainly recycled down, you get, I don't know, let's say 90% of the quality of virgin down, with probably, I shouldn't guess environmental figures, but certainly environmental benefits, let's say, over virgin down. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's very good. Yeah,
it's a thing.
It's a real thing, and as a result of the growing demand, there's better and better recycling schemes being set up. So in parts of Europe, there's already quite good schemes for recycling down, but in the UK, for example, there's not great recycling schemes for down. So if you take your duvets to the tip, they're not going to get recycled.
Right.
So please send your down products to us. We'll take any down product from any brand, duvet, pillow, sleeping bag, whatever. Send it back to us and we'll turn it into new products.
Wow.
This is all part of our down cycle scheme.
Right.
And we did a pilot scheme in Germany a couple of years ago. We had a absolutely staggering amount of down back. I think we got something like, it was a couple of tons of products back, I think, and we ended up making about 500 down vests for our the German Alpine Club, who we have a partnership with, and the rest of the products got basically the stuff that's not such good enough quality for us was turned into pillows, bedding, duvets, and stuff that's genuine waste from this product process gets turned into fertilizer and other things. So it's a really efficient process. And the partnership we do this through, the plant for cleaning and washing everything they have wastewater recycling, so there's not much wastewater. And it's a solar power plant as well. So it's pretty good.
That's brilliant.
It is really good. Yeah. So we have a partner in Hungary who are highly efficient. Yeah. So it's good.
Yeah, excellent. So Hungary, where the good down comes from.
A lot of it is, a lot of it.
Recycling a lot of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's a good
and
scheme.
Is there a point then, in terms of age of product or age of down, where it ceases to become effective?
Yeah, I think it differs enormously according to use. So if you've had a really lightweight product with not a lot of down in it, it's got really lightweight fabrics, you've sweated it into hundreds of times, you've washed it a lot, you've sat on it, you've maybe been driving your car and it just crushing it every day, that down is going to get worn out eventually. It starts breaking the fibers, and it will be less effective. It takes a lot of use though. It takes a lot, and most people won't get to that stage. So for the majority of the time it's fine, and when it comes to the down being recycled, a lot of those broken feathers are stripped out anyway. Right. So there's not been, to my knowledge anyway, a really big study done on durability of down having it been recycled. And I think that's something the industry doesn't understand enough about yet. But if we're completely honest, most of the time when people are using down jackets, they're not using them to their absolute limits. And same with sleeping bags. So maybe when you're buying your next down product, think, now, is this something I'm going to do my hardest trips, most difficult, demanding stuff with? If it is, maybe choose virgin down. Yeah. And if it's not, if this is really your pub coat and every coat,
bit of hill walking,
definitely, consider recycled down, because it's a really good material and it does have environmental benefits.
Yeah, because there's so many variables, isn't there? I guess you kind of say, down is going to last X number of years is impossible, because you don't know, like you say, how it's been treated, how it's been washed, how it's been cared for, how it's been stored, all those variables.
Yeah.
And I think, is that right, Harry? We did a little video, didn't we, on why jackets haven't got a warmth ratings, because there are so many variables, aren't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, warmth ratings it's difficult enough with sleeping bags, temperature ratings.
I remember TOG ratings.
Yeah.
I think there were some jackets had some TOG ratings on, but it just depends. A lot of it depends on. I think you touched on this earlier, didn't you, about the fit of a jacket?
Yeah.
Again, we've done a video on that. How best to wear your down jacket, and likewise with sleeping bags, because if you've got too much dead air inside a product, it's not going to keep you warm, is it?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think people get obsessed with materials because you can put them on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
People fit you can't put on a spreadsheet, and features you can't either.
Yeah.
So
metabolism,
weather. Yeah, there's so many factors. So it's if you're buying a new down jacket, down sleeping bag, look further than just the down itself, because you can. Obviously, good materials is a good starting point, but if the jacket doesn't fit you, or if it's not long enough, or the sleeves are too short, or I don't know, it doesn't have the features you want, it doesn't have a suitable hood, the pockets are in the wrong place, it's no good. So there's lots of factors to consider.
No, absolutely, and that kind of brings me on really nicely. That was one of my neatest segues. Turning into a radio DJ. It brings me on to construction, and I know that I know that the guys at Mountain Equipment are pretty fastidious.
Yeah.
In baffle construction.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest videos that I think it took me days. Normally I just wing it. I just it's like this kind of thing. You just talk. Stuff comes into your head and you talk. Products. Yep. I think the product that I had to do the most research and the most revision on was one of your Mountain Equipment. Which one was it, Harry? It was the Kyrios jacket.
Cryos jacket.
Cryos jacket.
Yeah.
Blimey, there's some baffling going on there. Some baffling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going on in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Do you want to just try and explain a little bit about baffles and how that affects the performance of a product?
Yeah.
Whether it's a sleeping bag or a jacket?
So down's absolutely useless if it doesn't stay where it needs to be. So in a sleeping bag, for example, if all the down shifts off your chest and to the sides of the bag, it's not doing very much use. And similarly, it's exactly the same in a jacket. If you bend put on almost any down jacket on the market and bend your elbow, and you'll get a cold spot on your elbow, where the down basically shifts away from it. It's really, really hard to control those points. So what we're obsessed with is down control, we call it, where you're trying to make sure the down stays, so it stays as warm as ever. And similarly, if you're wearing a rucksack, compressing the down underneath the shoulders, you end up with much less warmth there. And most of the time you won't notice this, but if you're somewhere really, really cold, then you will. So the Cryos jacket was a really interesting project with Paul Ramsden originally came to us, one of our sort of pro team of climbers, I suppose. And he'd got this route in mind in China, which was over 7,000 metre mountain. It had never been climbed by this route. And he'd got this vision of being, done this massive killer face. And then he was going to be at 7,000 metres on this really exposed ridge, exposed to the wind. And him and Nick Bullock were going to be up there on this ridge for days, just getting smashed by the weather. They were going to be, hypoxic and knackered.
Yeah.
And he just said, I want a jacket that's really, really light, but it also has to be really, really protective. And whether the weather's appalling, it has to be as warm as ever. And that was the real difficult bit, because there's loads of really warm down jackets, but they're not very weatherproof. So
very light.
All very light, yeah. So they just don't keep out the wind. They don't keep out any spindrift, rain, all that sort of stuff. They weren't going to encounter rain, but they'd certainly encounter snow sticking to the jacket, then melting when they got in their sleeping bag and stuff like that. So we had to try and make something really protective that was also going to be as warm on day 10 as it was on day 1. And it was a fascinating project. And one of the things we were looking at in great detail, as you could see with the Cryos jacket, was the just the sheer amount of baffling required to keep the down where it needed to be, and to try and make sure the down was lofting fully. So one of the things we were looking at was pleated baffles. We'd not used pleated baffles before, and effectively you have a baffle that's it's a stitched through baffle where the inside and the outside of the fabric meet, and you have like a sort of sausage with your down in the middle of it. but you sew it with a pleat, just like in a pleated skirt, so you have a little bit more extra volume. It means you get more thickness, and it ends up being warmer.
Right.
And so we were zoning the locations of different baffles, so smaller baffles in area where you need less warmth, bigger baffles where you need more warmth, just to try and make it as warm as possible everywhere while being efficient. So, there's no point in making some parts of the jacket really, really warm if it's right next to a cuff, for example, where you're gonna get some heat coming through anyway. Yeah. So this was a massive project. This ended up being a sort of mini range of products with a Cryos jacket, a Cryos pant, which was originally custom made in the office. We made 2 pairs in existence for Nick and Paul on this trip, and then it ended up being so good we ended up making a commercial product. A Xeros, which is that's my favourite down jacket. I've got to have a favourite, and that is my favourite one.
Yeah, I took one of those to Canada, to northern Canada.
Yeah, they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
There's an Exo jacket, which is really, really beefy. That's got taped seams as well. It's a heavier outer fabric, and that's got box wall construction as well. So maximum warmth. And the same products for women. So that's been a really exciting project, that one.
Yeah, it's it can make or break a jacket, can't it? It's the way that the down is placed around it. And I think a little bit as well. You talk about sleeping bags. I think what a lot of people kind of overlook is that when you get in a sleeping bag, all the down that's underneath you pretty much becomes redundant.
It gets squashed. It gets squashed a lot.
It gets squished, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it's something that we've worked really hard on, is trying to make it more effective when you lie on it. It's dead hard.
Because you've got a body weight squashing it down. Yeah.
But certainly if you look at there's a lot of sleeping bags which look incredibly lofty when they're standing up in a shop, and then you get in them and all the down underneath you goes woof and pushes to the side, and that is effectively worthless at that point. There's ways you can get around this, and we've worked pretty hard to get around these problems. But without giving too much away, our bags are different on the underside to most other manufacturers. I'll just say that. Yeah.
Well, you would.
Yeah.
That's the company line.
Yeah.
No, but they are.
Yeah.
They are. It's like I said, the amount of kind of revision I had to do around those jackets was phenomenal. It's not just box wall or stitch through.
It's a real mixture.
And really cleverly placed as well.
Yeah, we're lucky we've got a really dedicated design team, but also like techs that work on these garments. So these are the people who turn the designs basically into the finished products and do all the liaising with factories and stuff. And you just have to be really, really meticulous. And they're the people who make the difference between a good product and an amazing product. That's the absolute crucial step with these things. Yeah.
So those particular jackets were designed for a specific purpose, for a specific route, up a specific mountain,
absolutely,
for some specific people with some specific needs. So a very specialist jacket, indeed. But most of us, mere mortals, just want something warm and cozy to put on every day. Around town, or walking the dog, or or mountaineering in the UK, where actually the conditions for a down product, I'm guessing, are much tougher in some respects, because we live in a temperate climate. And from my days and years spent on the shop floor, I'd spend a lot of time trying to convince people that actually a down product is still okay for the UK, depending, as long as you know how to look after it. And a lot of people are still quite worried, aren't they, about using a down product, particularly in the rain. Because as we all know, if down gets wet, properly wet, soaking wet, it's useless. It's just
sort of like porridge.
We've all done it. You take your down jacket out of the washing machine, you think, oh my goodness, what have I done? It looks awful.
Absolutely.
It's like this sock full of porridge. Absolutely. It looks revolting. So what would be your best advice for people? Should they be worried? Should they not buy a down product for the UK? Have products improved over the years so it makes it a more practical solution?
I think fabrics have improved a lot. So water resistant fabrics are better than they used to be. You've got some of our down products have got really water resistant fabrics on, so they've got actual hydrostatic head, a measure of water resistance that definitely helps a lot. But I don't think people should be worried too much. It depends what you're using it for, though.
Yeah.
If you're walking the dog in all weathers,
we're back to those variables.
Yeah,
again,
exactly.
aren't we?
Yeah. There's no easy way around it. But like, if you're going to walk the dog in all weathers, and sometimes it's going to be lashing it down with rain. On the days when it's lashing it down with rain, don't wear your down jacket.
Yeah.
One thing that I've seen quite a lot of recently is people wearing down jackets as mid layers. So you've got a base layer on, maybe a fleece as well, then a down jacket, then your waterproof jacket on top if it's raining. And that's
gonna be hot.
That's really, really warm. Yeah. So I think I'd avoid wearing a down jacket as a mid layer unless it's absolutely freezing or you're not working very hard. So I often take a down jacket backpacking, and if it's raining at camp, I'll wear a down jacket exactly as I described there, underneath a waterproof, because I'm not working very hard. But if I'm going to start walking up a hill, I'd take that down jacket off, because otherwise you're just going to cook and you're going to soak it in sweat. And sweat is just as bad for your down jacket as rain is.
It's a liquid. Yeah, it clogs the down up.
Yeah, exactly. It's possibly even worse because of all the grease.
Yeah.
I would say for most of the time in the UK, it's not raining most of the time.
Yeah.
So a down jacket's great, and it's so comfortable to wear. It packs down really small if you want to put it in your bag or take it off or whatever. And if your down jacket does get wet, it's not game over. You can, the key thing to try and maintain the life of a down jacket is if it does get wet, let it dry out before you pack it away. And if it does get wet, if you can, avoid stuffing it somewhere really small. Like, don't stick it straight in its stuff sack. If you do that occasionally, it's totally fine. But if you did it every single day, eventually it's not going to like it.
Yeah, if you stored your jacket, for instance, compressed for a long period of time, it's going to stay compressed.
It is, especially if it was wet to go in there at the first place. It might even go mouldy, which would be, that would start sort of killing it off.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I wouldn't worry too much about it. We sometimes get this question with sleeping bags. Should I be buying a down sleeping bag or a synthetic sleeping bag? And basically, if you can afford it, a down sleeping bag is better than a synthetic sleeping bag in almost every way. There are occasional uses where a synthetic might be better. So I don't know, say you're bivvying, I know you're in the army and you're going to sleep in a trench, or like a real, like, you're going to be sleeping in liquid water.
Yes.
Well, you're
definitely going to get wet.
You're maybe getting in there with your boots on and it's really, really horrible. Or maybe you're going to the North Pole where it's going to be really cold and also 100% humidity.
Right.
But no, for most people, most of the time, a down sleeping bag is better.
Well, generally speaking, you're either going to be in a tent or a bunkhouse or a bothy. So you're going to have some protection from the elements. And there's nothing better than getting in a down sleeping bag at the end of a long hike. Or being up a mountain all day. It's just the most wonderful experience.
It's brilliant.
It's like climbing into a little warm cloud.
It is the best sort of warmth. Sleeping bag warmth is top of the list.
Absolutely.
And I think if you've got people say, it will get wet in my tent. If your tent's leaking a lot, that's a different problem.
You need to get a new tent.
There's definite ways around that problem. And if you've got loads of condensation building up, then again, there's ways to mitigate that if you're a bit more careful with maybe how you pitch it and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't worry too much about those small amounts of water. If I did once do a camp where I this is going to sound like an advert, but it actually happened. So this was a prototype sleeping bag of what became our Firefly sleeping bag, so our lightest of our lightweight range of bags. And I was backpacking up in Scotland for a few days, and the first day the weather was absolutely appalling. It was really, really bad, and I'd got it in a old stuff sack of mine, because prototype sleeping bags don't come with stuff sacks. And we got to the camp. We were really, really wet, but it was pretty cold as well. Put the tent up, cooked. I can pull my sleeping bag out, and the dry bag was useless. The tape had failed on it, and it was the sleeping bag was like a big sponge. It was absolutely soaked, and I was like, right, this is going to be really, really miserable. So I got in the bag with all my clothes on, including my waterproofs, and thought, right, I'm just going to shiver through the night. I'll be okay, but it's going to be grim. And I woke up in the morning, I couldn't believe it. My sleeping bag was dry, and all the clothes inside it were dry. So that was pretty good. That was the sort of demonstration of. It was really, really windy that night, and we left the tent like on sort of full ventilation mode, basically to try and dry stuff out. That was the sort of mark of a fabric that's really, really breathable. It's very lightweight, and it just and I was producing a lot of heat because I've been working hard all day and eating a lot of food. that meant you could dry everything out.
Wow.
So that was sort of the best demonstration I've had of a down sleeping bag working really well. But if it had been near freezing or below freezing, and I was, the bag might have had ice in it, that's very different. Yeah,
That's
this was relatively minor.
Yeah,
Mild. Sorry.
And then in terms of care,
yeah.
Again, a thing we get, you say to people, you wash your jacket, it'll be fine. It's down is quite tough, isn't it? It can be washed.
It is
quite easily in a washing machine.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think with lightweight down jackets, the sort of micro Baffle type jackets, generally speaking, they're fine. Put them in the washing machine, follow the care label, and then the more difficult thing is the drying. So if you've got access to a tumble dryer, it can help. But if you don't, put them out on the line and just occasionally just tease any little lumps apart. So it's a bit laborious sometimes, but you got to tease them apart with your hands. Set aside a boring day to do it. It's like a rest day recovery type thing. And you don't have to wash your down jacket all that often. If you're wearing the jacket daily, maybe wash it once a year, something like that. If it gets really dirty, then the easiest way to clean it is just like wet sponge, just wipe off any stains and stuff like that. And with sleeping bags, I'd always recommend someone use a sleeping bag liner. That just means that you're going to get a lot less grease directly on you. So a sleeping bag liner doesn't have to be clever. It can be a silk one or a fleece one or whatever. But if you're just base camping, if you like, you can use a sheet. Something really simple. If you're, every gram counts, you're doing something where you really want to keep your weight down, maybe leave your liner behind. But I've got a sleeping bag that's, I've probably slept in it 300 nights, something like that. It's been, really, really well used. I've only washed it twice. It's it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
It's only you using it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know how your friends might feel about it.
They don't have to use it. But I use a liner most of the time with that bag, and I think that definitely helps.
Yeah, that's a really good bit of advice, actually. I think it's something that's often overlooked, isn't it?
It is.
It just prolongs the life of the bag because
Yeah.
you're protecting the down, like you say, from the greases and the oils that come off you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've got a really, really warm sleeping bag, but it's quite mild, open the sleeping bag right up, because the thing with down is you can be really, really warm, but it doesn't feel sweaty because it's an amazing insulator. It's very breathable. But you're still producing lots of sweat, lots of grease into the bag. That's not going to do it a lot of good. So if you've got a really warm bag and it's actually really mild, open it right up and use it like a blanket.
Yeah, use it like a duvet.
Don't just sit there sweating, because that's not going to help the bag.
No.
Yeah.
No. So the trick is the washing's fine. The washing's not a problem. So follow the care advice. But getting it dry, that is the issue. Breaking up that lumpy porridge.
Exactly. Yeah. And with a sleeping bag, it can be a little bit more difficult, especially if you've got a big sleeping bag with lots of down in. It tends to be that you might just not have a big enough washing machine. So if any doubt, send it to the manufacturer for washing or to a specialist wash cleaning service. There's a lot of those around now, isn't there? Actually, there are.
They're more than there used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do a very good job.
It just takes away the worry, I guess, if you have any concerns.
And we sometimes get people sending us things saying, I don't know how to wash this, and we'll quite happily wash it for people. So it's I think it goes alongside the growth of repair services. Everyone quite rightly demands things to be repaired, and this is part of servicing your product, making it last longer, which is all important.
Yeah, well, it's my old mantra: buy once and buy well, and look after it.
Absolutely, completely.
And get it serviced properly. You wouldn't buy a Ferrari and never service it.
Yeah,
that
totally.
Kind of thing, isn't it?
And if you're buying a 600 quid sleeping bag, 800 quid sleeping bag, you are buying a Ferrari sleeping bag. If you're buying a 400 pound down jacket, again, same thing. And you wouldn't expect to pull it out of the garage and it just work.
It just work absolutely perfectly.
So, you should look
that's a
after
really
them.
Good point. Really good point. There is some responsibility by the end user. To ensure the longevity and performance of their product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, which some people seem to forget. No names in a pack drill. Well, Matt, I think we've completely covered. Just about everything, I think, to do with down and feathers and jacket construction, sleeping bag construction, layering, techniques, care, aftercare, sourcing. I mean, we've
that's pretty much it. Yeah,
pretty much smashed it, haven't we?
Done.
So
Tick.
let's tick. And besides that, my brain is starting to ache, which is a sign that it's had far too much information forced into it. So let's move on to some questions that have been sent in by various people out there in the ether. There's quite a few questions here, and I think actually most of them we've answered through the podcast.
Okay.
People have been asking about fill power. People have been asking about, should I use synthetic? Should I use down? Should I use a thick jacket or a thin jacket? And I think, to be fair, we've covered that pretty concisely pretty thoroughly, I should say, in the podcast. But there's a couple here that are really interesting. So Anthony Lucio asks, he'd like to hear more about wool insulation. In comparison to either synthetic or down. Is it a good alternative? Does it provide the same kind of insulation gram for gram, or is it just a marketing thing?
This is a good question. Wool is an amazing insulator, obviously, but people tend to think of it in terms of woolly jumpers, knitted jumpers. But they're brilliant layers. But the way people are using it now can be in basically like wadding, just like synthetic waddings, but they're made with wool, or wool and other things. This is something we've looked at really hard over the last few years. There's a fantastic supplier based in Yorkshire who use.
They do it proper then.
They do it proper, yeah. And they do regenerative farming, which is a whole other topic, but really, really important. We've looked really hard at some of their materials, and we've been testing prototypes literally for years on this sort of subject. And basically wool has a few properties that are really interesting. One of which is sort of buffering, I'm going to call it, which is like it can absorb a lot of moisture before you notice it. In the same way that merino wool base layers can feel really, really, really comfortable. And it's really durable. It doesn't smell. It's a natural product. It's got. I'm not going to get too much onto sustainability because it's such a complex topic, and there'd be better people to discuss it than me. But in some regards, wool is a really, really sustainable material, and I'd argue it is pretty damn good. But in terms of insulation, it provides less insulation for its weight than down, certainly, and less insulation for its weight than most synthetics.
Right.
But for something that's really comfortable, really nice to wear, it's a great material. Tends to be quite expensive, which may or may not be a concern.
Okay, so you probably find those products that are insulated with wool are perhaps not intended for the more kind of extreme ends of outdoor use,
I think that's fair.
Where weight and pack size are the absolute sort of paramount.
It's pretty good for active type insulation as well, so something that has to be comfortable to wear, buffering some moisture, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But it's an area that's changing quite quickly. There's some manufacturers who've made their entire range basically out of wool, and that's led to some changes in the way the whole industry is working. Also, people are looking at alternatives to fossil fuel based synthetics, and there's changes in the world of synthetics that are going to be they're huge changes that are going to come in relatively soon regarding sourcing. So everyone wants recycled materials, but there is legislation that's not yet come in, but it's on its way, or it might be on its way, which would mean that sourcing recycled synthetics will have to be different, because at the moment most recycled materials come through plastic bottles. Plastic bottles are recycled, turn into fabrics. The problem is that's downcycling, because you can't make fabric back into bottles, but you can make bottles into more bottles. So if the EU, and I shouldn't go into too much into detail on this because I'm not an expert. But in short, they want plastic bottles to be sourced mostly from recycled plastic bottles, which suddenly means that the whole waste stream is taken away from the textile industry. So the textile industry is going to have to work a lot harder on sourcing their own recycled textiles, which it should be doing already. But as a result, people are looking at alternatives to synthetics, and wool will be on that list.
I remember back in day when I was in the Scouts in Yorkshire. and we used to camp. We used to stay up at a place called Hag Dyke, which is above Kettlewell.
Mm-hmm.
It was the highest inhabited farmhouse in Britain. And our scoutmaster used to make us. We used to rock up there from Wetherby, and it was a good hour and a half's drive up there.
Yep.
So we go over on a Friday night, and it'd be dark,
Mm.
and he'd make us walk up to Hag Dyke,
Mm-hmm.
which was probably a couple of miles up onto the side of Whernside, I think it is.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's Whernside, if my memory serves me correctly. And my enduring memory of that is wearing a big Aran sweater
Oh, yeah.
and a PVC cagoule.
Yeah.
And invariably, I'd have to take the cagoule off because I was sweating so much inside it. And
Yeah.
the wool sweater
Yeah.
kept me warm,
Yeah.
even when it was wet. And
Yeah.
it was hanging off me like a sodden
Yeah.
sheep clinging to my back.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of my... And it stank.
Mm.
Because it was one of them, proper Aran one, it's oily.
Oh, yeah.
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 But it was great. It was
Yeah.
a great bit of kit.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for knitted wool jumpers. They're from a sustainability point of view, they're fantastic. They're really... knitting is a very low energy use. They last forever. They're comfortable to wear. They look good on and off the hill.
Yeah.
They're good bits of kit.
Yeah, in this age when everyone's... Well, not everyone. When the kind of the general feeling is it's got to be lighter. It's got to be and packed down teeny tiny, which is fair enough if you're an extreme mountaineer. But for the likes of us mere mortals, a woolly sweater is a great piece of kit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think.
Like you say, you can wear it down the pub afterwards.
Yeah. No, they I think. If I'm at home in the office, I'm often wearing a wool sweater.
Yeah.
I'm not usually wearing, some super performance fleece.
No.
Yeah.
Let's big it up for the woolly sweater.
Yeah.
For the revival. Yeah. We could even get back into turtlenecks, couldn't we? Well, that would be pushing it a little bit, wouldn't
maybe,
it?
like a Bond villain.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's just finish up with a couple of points raised by Rachel Wilson, because these are quite funny, actually. Rachel, thank you for sending these in. So, why is down called down instead of up, sideways, or underneath?
Pass.
Yeah,
don't know that one.
That's a really good question. We don't know, Rachel.
Yeah.
Is it because it's downy?
Yeah.
Down
I don't know which.
Is it a verb? Is it
chicken or egg there? I don't know which one came first. Yeah, the
downy or downy. Yeah. Okay. All right. Stumped us there, Rachel. And why is it that down performs poorly when it's wet, but ducks and geese are quite happy to bob around in the water?
Major reason for this is the flight feathers on top, so they're basically wearing a
shell,
semi-waterproof.
a hard shell.
They've got a shell layer on top.
Yeah.
The other thing is when we take the down off the birds, the feathers are cleaned, and because people don't like the smell of feathers, the oiliness which is inherent in the birds is removed completely, along with it the water resistance. Okay. Yeah.
So it's the oil basically, isn't it?
Yeah. The feathers are naturally oily,
but
people don't like the smell of smelling like a goose or a duck. Fair enough. And it might mat together if it wasn't cleaned.
Okay.
So the oiliness is
because
removed.
the end user's not going to preen their own
exactly.
down jacket like a bird would.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's once that oiliness is gone, your water resistance is largely gone as well.
Right.
But down is more water resistant than people think. It'll still, if I got some down, stuck it in that water, it would float.
Yeah.
It'll float for quite a while.
Yeah. It doesn't absorb moisture, does it?
No, not initially. No. Eventually it would. So there's the cuticle, the outer layer, just like on your nails.
Yeah.
And that doesn't absorb water. But once it's through, then it gets into the cortex, which is the sort of central part of the fibre. And that's like a big sponge.
Right.
So that's when it gets all wet. Yeah.
It gets soggy.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Right. I'm going to wrap it up there. It's been absolutely fascinating, man. It's been a real pleasure.
No, thank you very
I've
much,
learned a few things.
Oh, good. Yes, I've learned some stuff as well. Yeah,
there you
need
go.
to look at the etymology of down as well.
Absolutely, we do. Yes, we might come back to it. I might post it as a little thing on the video. Harry might, I don't know, stick something on there, something that tells us what down means. Why is it called down? That's there you go. That's the question of the day, isn't it? So. Once again, Matt, thank you very much. I know you've travelled down a long way to come and see us. It's been a real pleasure. And all that leaves me to do really is to sign off to say thank you very much for everybody for listening. All 5 of you, I think it is now. So if you're all out there, I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. It's a blast making them, really enjoying it. And if you want to keep up with them, you know what to do. Just subscribe to your normal podcast supplier. If you have any questions or comments, pop them in the section below, or if you're looking at this on the video. We do answer them, don't we, Harry? He's nodding, and he does. Yeah. So yeah, please leave any questions or comments. And I shall just say once again, thank you, Matt, and toodaloo.
Thanks very much.